Okay, welcome to part 2 of TR6060 swapping the 67 Belair. Left off in the last episode with the transmission being mounted, but with a big hole in the floor. So in this episode, we're going to try to get this covered up, and we might try to have a drive shaft made, but that might be for the next part. But we're at least going to get started on building the tranny tunnel for this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get in here and I'm going to pull the radio out because it's just going to be in the way for the moment, and we'll get it out and we will start at the top. And I think I'll do like I did in the Chevette, and I'll put one piece out for the top and then build my sides back in. I think that'll be easier with the tools I have than trying to make this all out of one piece. So get that radio out and we'll get started on this thing. Got my first piece of metal here laid out. I'm using 20 gauge sheet metal. I was going to use 18, but I wasn't going to have enough to do the whole thing, so I decided to just use 20 gauge, which should be plenty strong. This is the top piece, this is the back, that's the front. It's going to start at 12 inches and taper down to 9 inches. So to find out these angles and stuff so it's symmetrical, all I did is I measured to the center of my 12, and then measured out the same distance here, found my center line and measured on each side, and then I straight edge from this line to the end of my 12 inches, which I'm sure most of you know, but if you didn't, that's how I did it. So I'm going to use my little shears here from Harbor Freight, cut this out real quick, set it in the car, and start getting ideas for the two side panels. Got this top piece laid in here. Now up here at the front, I'm going to roll those over a little bit, so it's not going to be just a box. It'll be pretty boxy, but it won't be just straight corners everywhere. I didn't come all the way to the back because I'm still trying to figure out how this shifter assembly kind of works. So we're going to do this big of a box, and then we'll put a little piece in here to cover all the rest of this up. So then we can, I still want to be able to get the shifter off from underneath the car. That's why I made it wide enough to get these pins out on both sides. So we're going to get some measurements and we'll start laying out this passenger side piece. Okay, got the second piece in. Might be a little boxier than I thought, but it's going to work just fine. It'll give me a lot of room up here to mount some cup holders or something on that flat spot. I'm going to build the sides a little longer, and then I'll get all that tacked together and then work on building the surround for this shifter, because it has to mount here, and that's what holds the back of the shifter, because it's a remote mount. So I'm going to get a template made up for the other side, get it cut out, and then maybe tack these three pieces together so I can start working on this back half, and then I won't have a big hole in my floor anymore. So here we go. Got the template marked up for the driver's side. This one here I did a little different, trying to save as much room as possible up by the gas pedal, because the gas pedal's right next to the tunnel, but it should be fine. So we'll get this drawn up on a piece of metal, and I'll smooth out that little notch down there, and we'll cut it out, throw it in here, see how it looks, and probably tack all three of these sides together so they'll quit moving around, and then we'll start working on this back half. And I've got an idea on how this is going to work to get the shifter out from the inside of the car, so that taking the transmission out in the future should be pretty easy. So we'll see if I can get that done. Okay, got the driver's side in. Got it tacked to the top piece. It's looking pretty good. I got it bent up here at the front. You can't really see it to where it'll go up against the tunnel a little better. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to push in on the bottom as I go to make sure it fits nice and tight, and then I'll go in on the bottom of the car when we pull the tranny back out, and I'm going to cut out any extra metal just to make the hold for the transmission that much bigger. So probably pull this thing out, weld it a little bit more along these top two seams to make it nice and solid, and then we'll maybe put it back in the car and start welding it to the floor. A little darker in here. My big light that I had hanging from the ceiling, it died. So I've got this in here, got 3 sheet metal screws on both sides. Kind of gives you an idea of how the shape is going to go. I I think instead of welding it in now, I'm going to go ahead and finish the whole back side of it with my little, I'm going to try to build like a removable section so I can get the shifter out from the top of the car instead of from the bottom, because I think it'd be kind of a joke to do it from the bottom. So we'll build a little box over this and try to make it removable, and then it'll be ready to weld in solid, other than the little box that'll go from here to there. So here we go. Alright, I got this last piece drawn out on what we're going to make. This will fold on these dotted lines here, and it'll also fold across right there. And that's going to cover this back section of the tunnel up, and I'm going to end up cutting the sides off right where the top ends. I'll cut the sides off there, just so that I can make sure it should be nice and square. And then are going to cut a hole in the top from the very back all the way up to where the shifter pins go in that hold the shifter on. We're going to cut that out so we can make that removable to you know, pull this shifter out in case we got to pull the tranny and we don't have to fight with it from the bottom. So I'm going to get this piece here cut out, fold it up, and see if it fits. Okay, here's the tunnel out of the car. We're getting ready to cut this hole right here, this little square. This is where we're going to be able to get the shifter out from on top of the car instead of trying to get to it from the bottom, because of how the clips for these right here, these have a weird clip that goes down into the top of the transmission. So I'm going to cut this square out, then I'm going to cut another square that's just like it, only a little bit bigger, and flange it so that it will sit right on top and bolt down into the top of this and be real solid. And we'll also drill our holes for these two screws here to screw in, and these here. So then our shifter will be firmly mounted, and if it's not firm enough, then we'll come back in and put some flat stock on there to stiffen it up, and we'll have ourselves a transmission tunnel. Alright, got this thing welded in here pretty much. Just stitching it along the bottom. Still got to do a little bit of work up here at the front to get everything to fit just right. This side's pretty much welded. It's got a couple little gaps. The other side, I'll probably get it from the bottom because it's it's got a little bit of a gap that I can hammer it shut from the bottom. So I might put this thing back up in the air, and then once we get it all welded, I'll build my little plate to cover that back up that the shifter will bolt to, and then we'll be ready to start on the seam sealing and the painting. Okay, transmission's back out. Just about got it welded up enough where I'm happy with it. We had to put a patch panel in here because I started tapping on this with a hammer to make it line up a little better. And turns out this rusty old car is nothing but rust. So this here just ripped open, so I made this long enough to get to some good metal. So I'm going to come in here and weld across here to stiffen this back up. And I'll put a little piece in here because I messed that up on my piece I cut out. And then we'll be able to clean this up, paint it, and seam seal it. And we're going to come in also and cut this off down to where I welded it, just to give a little bit more room in the back for the transmission because it's still a little bit tight. So that's where we're at. Alright, got this piece welded all the way in as much as I could with as rusty as the floor is. I got a little piece in here, all the holes are filled, so I went ahead and sprayed the rest of the floor down. You can kind of see it with some degreaser because I've never painted this floor since I put it in. So come out in the morning and clean that up, get this whole floor ready to paint. All I got to do is come in here and cut these. I'm going to cut this metal back to here like I said, and we'll get the whole floor cleaned up and painted so it'll look nice. Got my fan laying on the ground because I washed this thing off this morning as best I could out here because we don't have running water out in the shop, but got the grease washed off the main part of the floor. Got my seam sealer in after I primed the bare metal of the tunnel. So we're going to let that set up for a minute, and then we're going to paint the whole floor. I got just some implement spray paint. Should be pretty tough down here on the bottom of the car. So once we get this stuff set up a little bit and the rest of the floor dries off, we'll come in here and spray some black paint on the floor. and that's where we'll be. Alright, got 2 coats of my implement paint on the floor. Looks a whole lot better than it did. So this here's almost dry. I'm going to put it back down on the ground, roll it out, and then I'm going to pull the rest of the carpet out. And while I got it this far, I'm going to go ahead and paint the floor on the inside too. And I haven't decided if I'm going to brush that on or spray it on like I did this here, but we'll see when we get there. Alright, got everything cleaned out of the inside of the car, got it vacuumed out. I'm going to start by putting a little bit of primer on the new tunnel and on any of these bare metal spots. Might scuff up some of this little surface rust deck here, and we'll start getting this floor here painted too.